Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cinematic Realms. I'm your host, John Webster, and with me is a returning guest, the wonderful Hannah from the Game of Owns podcast. How are you doing, Hannah?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited that you had me back. So thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, no, it's been a long while, though. It's time just kind of speeds by without you noticing. Although I guess that's only half true with the pandemic, because it feels like time
Right.
has also stretched on
Well, because
forever.
if you told me, I think that it was May 2020 that I did this last. I would have
Yeah.
believed you that if you told me it was May 2021, I would have absolutely been like, yes, that was when it happened. So time doesn't exist right now. So could have been
Yeah.
last week. I don't know.
I
It's kind
had
of
you
wild.
on that time for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which seemed like obvious to me because um, just because you're probably like the biggest Harry Potter fan that I know, and when we went to GeekyCon, you took me to Wizard Rock and
Yes,
everything,
I did.
which was me out of my element, but I had a great time. And then we got to talking, and you mentioned La La Land as a movie that you really liked, and I was like, well, we should definitely talk about that. And then we were set to do it earlier this year, and then a whole bunch of stuff got in the way as far as my scheduling and everything, but we're finally doing it. So
We're here. I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
yep.
So I'm
Let me
glad
add,
to.
let me
Oh,
actually
go
give us
ahead.
some more space. There we go.
You can see more of my apartment this way, so add to
um
the vibes.
yeah. But how have you been? I mean, I know
I've been,
things have been hectic for everybody, but yeah.
yeah, it's a strange time. But we were kind of talking before we went live just about how strange it's been that we haven't been to a real convention in so long at this point, and just the opportunity, like time is so strange. And so I feel like, hey Laura, another person I haven't seen in a long time. that I just like miss hanging out with everybody, and I miss having conversations, and I miss dragging you to a Wizard Rock show, something you don't really want to do. I miss those kind of opportunities to connect. So things are good and everything is going great. But I kind of miss a lot of the stuff that we used to do, and I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to be back in a freezing cold ballroom with you and everybody again
Yeah,
very
I mean,
soon.
everybody in because actually all the Here Be Dragons folk, we have a Slack group where basically we started that pretty much after the last Ice and Fire Con got canceled, because it was
Yeah.
like, we have to have some kind of bringing together of everybody we're friends with. So everybody in our Slack group has been hearing ad nauseum about how I'm like sick and tired of not being able to meet up with my
It's
friends, because
hard. Yeah.
the goalpost keeps getting moved, and it's really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hoping that next year Ice and Fire Con will be a thing that actually happens. And yeah.
If not, we're going to have some problems. I'm going to be sorely. I mean, of course, it's a balance. I'm an event planner. So, like, I run conventions and trade shows. And so it's a balance in keeping people safe and comfortable. But at the same time, I'm just like ready to roll. Also, I'm dog sitting a dog. So I don't know if you can hear him eating food next to me, but this is like a
Well,
whole new experience for me. So,
we do have a rule on this stream and on Here Be Dragons, and it's basically that if a pet makes its way across the screen at any point, we have to stop all the conversation, and attention will be focused.
got
So
it. If he
yeah,
gets into the frame, I'll make sure we move out of the way. So,
yeah.
how's
And
everything going
since
for you?
uh, okay, things have been kind of hectic. I don't want to like bring down the stream, but there's been like family health issues, and on top of that,
Sure.
with the pandemic and not being able to see friends, that's going to change. Next weekend, we talked about it. I'm going to get to actually go and meet Aziz and Ashea, which I'm really
So
psyched for.
jealous. Yeah.
I know people keep saying that I mentioned that on purpose to make people jealous. What is happening?
It's working. It's working.
Yeah, but no, other than that, good. You know, Stephen here is mentioning HereBeCon. Hopefully that does happen in October, where I'm gonna finally get to meet a whole bunch of people. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, big time.
But yeah, so aside from that, yeah, everything's just kind of and go and say, yes, Kate, sorry. I know.
Can we all go with you? We'll just show up, you know?
You guys just have to teleport into my car here in Florida.
Right.
That shouldn't be a problem, right? But yeah, so anyway, just starting off talking about La La Land, like I'm interested why you like when I asked you last time, I said, you know, what movies do you like? And you mentioned this. I'm interested why, like, how did you see the movie in theaters? And like, are you a fan of musicals in general?
Totally. I'm a huge musical fan. Love musicals, grew up watching them, always kind of aggressively liked them. When we had that conversation, whenever it was, and I listed off my favorite movies, you made a comment and you were like, wow, you're a really big musical fan. And I guess I just like that never clicked in my head because I listed off a couple musicals. It never clicked in my head that was the case. So you opened up a new line of thinking for me. So love musicals, always have. And then saw the movie in theaters, and it was one of the most, I have never wept or sobbed so openly in a movie theater as I did watching this movie. So I don't know what happened, but it struck a chord with me. And ever since then, it's just been one of my all-time favorites. So I know that it's a little controversial for some reason that I can't understand, but I've loved musicals. And so this is right up my alley. And
well, I feel like that there's always controversy with movies that are big awards players because there ends up being a battle between, you know, all the nominees and especially like the front runners, and all of a sudden, like because this was the front runner for a long time in the race, and I think that those inherently get a lot of criticism heaped on them for like a very concentrated amount of time, and then everybody forgets why they were angry at a certain movie or whatever. But like I saw this and it just like I watched it again this morning and I just like had a big grin on my face for so much of the movie. I was in tears for other parts, but for the most part, like it's such a joyous film.
Totally.
And I generally feel that way about musicals. I know a lot of people have issues with musicals because I think they tend not to be able to give themselves over to the fantasy of people are just going to break out in the song now. But like that's kind of the whole thing about the movies for me, where you know what you're watching is a fantasy. Like anything can happen because it's on a theater screen. It's not real life. It's, you know. So I always say just, you know, go crazy, do whatever. And but yeah, I love this movie.
It's a spectacle. You know, I think all musicals are, especially the old school, like traditional ones, are such a spectacle that I think that it's hard not to get swept up in the excitement of, you know, the song transitions from scene to scene. And why can't we break out into song every day, everywhere? That's like how I feel in my heart. And I don't know if like I grew up in a house where we sang through all of our different emotions. And so maybe that's just a little bit more ingrained into how I handle things. But, you know, why can't that be our reality? So that's what I see it.
I've gotten away in like the way I format these conversations of like starting at the beginning and working through. But like, I feel like I inherently, especially since Kate just mentioned it, start at the beginning with Another Day of Sun, the opening number, because I love the way that it starts off where you're just, the camera's panning across all these different people in their cars listening to different radio stations and stuff. And then it zeroes in on this, one young woman singing the lyrics to the opening song of the film, but she could just be
Yeah.
singing along to what's playing, in her car. And then it like seamlessly transitions into this big musical number. I just think it's so brilliant the way they did that. And it's like, I know they were originally going to cut that number out of the movie.
Oh, they were.
Because it wasn't directly connected to any of the main
Sure.
characters, but it works so brilliantly as an overture to the whole thing and gets you like, I think if they didn't have that, then it would be kind of odd once the first musical number sort of pops up.
Sure.
But because the movie starts off with that big number, it gets you in that headspace for you're watching a musical, and to just sort of get in the mood for it.
Right. It sets the tone for everything, for the even like the color scheme, it's like bright and colorful and big right out the gate. And I totally agree that first, when does the next musical number come through? Is it when she's getting ready to go to the party?
It's when they're getting ready to go out, which I also love that one. It's Someone in the Crowd, which might be my favorite number just because it's so exuberant and I love the choreography of the girls walking down the streets and doing stuff with their dresses and stuff.
And it gets stuck in your head. It gets stuck in your head. I mean, I left the theater with those songs running in my head. I remember my sister and I saw it together, and we left the theater and got in her car, and then we immediately went on to Spotify and started listening to the soundtrack, because it was just one of those things where you hear the music, and I feel like the music, I know it's a musical, so this is like maybe kind of a cliche thing to say, but the music is so powerful in this movie, and it is just such a character in its own right. And I think that that's something that's really exciting. And I have like 50 thoughts in my head about that, but I just like how we've got these big, bright musical numbers so rooted in realism, and we're sitting in traffic and we're driving our Priuses and don't want to go to the party and we're getting parking tickets and things like that. I feel like musicals, people find them inaccessible sometimes. Like if that's not your genre, it's hard to get into it because it's been a long time since that's been a normal thing that's been on screen. And so a lot of them are from decades ago, where it's, just a little bit more pristine and there's a little bit more sheen on the whole thing. But I think that from the get-go, you get these big, loud, bright dance numbers while people are dealing with very modern day problems, which sets up for like a very exciting ride for me.
Yeah, it does seem like we have some dissenters today, because like I don't get this. Kate, bless you, I love you to death, but her and I are also very contentious about our opinions on Marvel movies. But didn't love a lot of the songs. Man, I will say that for me, the songs actually came before the movie because I was watching a lot of the promotional material for it. And I think it was either one of the trailers or one of the featurettes where the songs were already getting stuck in my head. So I immediately bought the soundtrack before I saw the film.
Oh, okay.
And so I was listening I don't think I listened to all of them, because I wasn't sure which songs would give away maybe some spoilers for the movie. But I remember they got stuck in my head and they were like earworms and then I saw the movie and, like I said, just grinning like an idiot the whole time. It was just such a wonderful experience.
The same thing happened to me. Like I said, I think that this is an argument I have with my grandma all the time, strangely enough. She always talks about how she doesn't like the songs in this movie because the actors aren't really singers and they're not really giving it their all, and it sounds not good or whatever kind of things. Like there's that argument that if you're going to put on some sort of Broadway-esque musical type of thing, then why wouldn't you get people who are more suited for that type of show or that type of song or that type of dance number, things like that. And I mean, we're seeing some comments like I think that a lot of the actors like Ryan Gosling learned how to play the piano, and they both went through a lot of dance training. I think that this idea that they, like I was kind of saying before, they aren't perfect and their voices aren't pristine and they're not belting it like you might assume in some sort of classic musical. And I think that kind of adds to the charm of the whole thing.
I also think they aren't belting it because like they don't have that kind of musical range. I think the songs are purposely written to suit you know what the actors are actually capable of performing, rather than I've seen some musicals where the actors clearly don't have the chops and they're being asked to do Russell Crowe and Les Miserables.
Okay. Yeah, don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me started on that.
My favorite thing to come out of that adaptation of Les Miserables was when what's the actor's name, the guy who does Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen, when he got up at the Golden Globes and he was introducing the movie or something, and he's listing off all these factoids, and he says and Russell Crowe took however many months of singing lessons, and yeah, that was really worth the money spent.
Yeah, he was, and to your point, Russell Crowe is supposed to step into that role of Javert as with this beautiful baritone voice, and he totally biffs it. Whereas the songs written for this are much more suited for normal people in normal life, going about their normal things. Yeah. So that's a good point.
And honestly, as to why it's them, it's because Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone were purposely picked to do this because they have amazing chemistry, and we want to see these two actors doing this. So I mean, that's the thing. It's part of the charm of going to see a movie musical is we like to see famous people doing these sort of musical numbers.
Yeah.
So I think it was done the correct way, and that the songs were written for what they could perform, and I think they're both absolutely splendid in it. And I would say that the job Emma Stone does, especially at the end of the film when she's singing her big number for her audition, that never fails to blow me away. I think she's utterly fantastic there.
From that moment until the very end is when the tears start.
Oh,
So
yeah,
but I won't jump in your chronological order too much.
No. Well, that's the thing. I love to jump all over the place. I mean, we can go ahead and say, especially that whole final montage when Ryan Gosling is playing on the piano and we see what might have been. I was just awash in tears.
I've never cried like that in a movie theater before, and I was kind of thinking, as I rewatched this afternoon, I was kind of thinking about how I think that part of what makes, not only is Emma Stone's performance in that, what's that song called? What's her last song called?
I
the
think
audition
it is
song.
I think it is Audition.
Something like that. Oh yeah. I think you're right. They stop singing for it stops being a musical for the second half of the movie, and it's just instrumental music throughout the whole second half. It's after they have their first kiss and you get that classic old-timey movie, the end credit type of scene, and then you don't have any sort of musical dancing or singing elements until we get to the audition, and then you're kind of swept back into the emotion from the beginning of the movie. I feel like the performance is wonderful. I feel like the storyline is wonderful. And I feel like reintroducing those elements at the very end is also powerful because you're just kind of recalling a lot of the already nostalgia from the beginning of the movie, if that makes sense.
Sorry, I'm just I have to bring up some of Erin's comments, and also she's also here for Spicy Laura.
Yeah, bring it on. I'll fight anyone.
Although I do I agree with this take, and what I really noticed was how there's even like a perfect place for an intermission in this movie.
Hmm.
You know, after they go up to the observatory, and there's that gorgeous musical sequence which completely gives itself over to fantasy. I love that moment where the handkerchief goes
Yeah.
floating away, and then
Yeah.
they leap up,
Yeah.
into the stars, and there's that moment where they kiss, and the shot dissolves, with a circular wipe, and you could put intermission right there, and then the
Yeah.
second half of the movie feels quite different because then it starts to deal with more realistic sort of parts of their relationship, and
Hmm.
and dealing with things like how are they going to financially survive, and all that stuff. So
Totally.
almost to the point where you get to that point and you're like, no, keep things happy and light.
I know. Well, that's like the whole class. I mean, in my mind, I'm not an expert, but the classic musical vibe is to have kind of those happy ending, tie it up nicely with a bow at the end with that magical number at the very end, and then you don't really get the realism. You don't really get the color scheme changes a little bit and it feels darker and it's harder, and they've already fell in love and now they have to put in the work and they have to, like you said, pay the bills, and there's miscommunication and they don't understand what the other person really wants from them, and they're not really talking about it, and they're just making assumptions, all those different real elements to a relationship that I think are left out of some of those classical musicals from my perspective. And
Yeah,
so it
something that
adds depth.
really something that really hit me on this viewing was sort of the tragedy of the fact that um, I want to talk more about the fantasy half of the movie before we get into the, the sadder
The
territory.
depressing stuff.
But I do have to mention, like, it is sad that the point where Ryan Gosling says, "This is what you wanted from me." He
Yeah.
had made assumptions based on an overheard phone call with that she was having with, I think, presumably her mother, and like, it's like, dude, you just needed to actually talk with her
I
and see how
know.
she's feeling, because like, hearing a conversation with a parent is not the same as actual
No.
truth of how
Right.
a person is feeling. Definitely not.
100%. And it makes me feel sad because I feel like he, throughout the duration of their relationship, is so supportive and kind of helps her realize that she can follow her dreams and that she has the potential. He kind of gives her the courage to do that. And in return, they have this miscommunication about his dream and what he needs to do. And, she's trying to be supportive, but they aren't able to really talk about why he's doing the things that he's doing. And I feel like there's such a tragedy in the fact that they had the ability to kind of unlock that potential in each other and didn't actually work out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Actually
Aaron.
talking. Yeah, you hate to see it. But I don't think it happens in real life either, though, that often, to be honest with you. So
Yeah, exactly. But and that's sort of what makes the second half of this movie sting, because it feels true to real life. It's stepping back from the fantasy that we like to see in movies, and tackling some real world feelings and mistakes. Um, which that's why the ending of the movie is so freaking bittersweet, because
yeah.
I think the two of them come to a good place, but it's, especially in light of that sort of fantasy montage that we get, you see like all the mistakes that they did make along the way, and like that's like the if only set of events that we wish could have unfolded that way, but
Yeah.
it just didn't.
It didn't.
Anyway, let's go back more towards the beginning.
I got more stuff to say about that, so stop me.
Because there's so much happy in the beginning of this, and like
I don't know,
I'm
John. I
always
think we like the drama of the sadness. That's like our vibe
I
right
do.
now.
Well, ask people in the chat, and they'll say, like, especially Erin. She always, like, I have conversations with Erin about like my taste in movies and stuff, and I know that you know, she prefers things to, I think, stay a bit lighter, and I'm always going on. But yes, don't you see the genius in this darkness?
Yeah.
I can't help it. Like I like to, you know, as long as something's emotionally engaging me, and I don't care if it's putting me through the ringer to do that. But
sometimes you just need to cry, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Nothing wrong with
exactly.
that.
But that said, there is so much that makes me so joyous in the first half of this movie. I really just have to talk about like how much amazing chemistry Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone have, that like every sort of back and forth between them is just like hysterical. I love just like there's stuff before this, but like when she sees him performing that's like this summer function or whatever, and she's completely trolling him with requesting Iran, and the way he looks at her, and then they have that little back and forth where he's like, oh, you're an actress, have I seen you in anything?
It's just like see you in the movies. Yeah. They have a ton of chemistry, and it's so witty, like it's just like there's all these little quips. I feel like there's such a lightness to it, and the two of them together are just magical.
I gotta throw up some pictures of that because it's great.
Yeah. His vibe there is unmatched. I mean, look at that. Nobody can step to him.
Also, sorry, go ahead.
Well, why is she wearing like everyone else is in a bathing suit and she's in a dress? I don't understand. Like everyone else is partying in the pool and she's like fully dressed. I never really understood that, but it's probably not important. So,
well, I guess maybe she's going there to try and make some contacts, and she's not really planning on going to sleeping. But then there's that really awkward guy who's like, yeah, I got a lot of heat on me right now. And it's like, get away, dude.
It is so, and you look at like the chemistry between those two. I mean, I know it's set up to be that way and be annoying, but something that I really liked I just loved those party scenes because, I mean, I from what I hear, that it's just very LA, like that whole vibe. But I've been to enough parties in my life and been to enough conventions and been to enough networking events to just understand that vibe of like everybody is there trying to mingle, trying to get some, trying to network, and I just feel like they captured that really well in the beginning of everybody just kind of like trying to intermix, and all of her roommates are like, you don't know who you're going to meet. Like, this could be your chance. We got to get out there hustling because we got to, be out there with our peers and da 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 da. I love that. It's such a young thing to be stressed out about, you know what I mean? I feel like it's such a like early in your career, and especially when you're I guess I don't know anything about, like I said, being an actress, but I feel like all that networking in those parties, like you could just feel how much I would hate to be there through the screen in a good way.
Yeah, the movie is like a love letter to LA. I feel like, but at the same time, it goes, it does point out the things that are probably very irksome about being out there. And I know that, like, I only have the experience of the one time I went out to Los Angeles for a trip, and it's my fault because I went by myself. But like,
did you get invited to any pool parties while you were there?
No, I just I went there, when I had this sort of fantasy in my head about the fact that in a few months after that, I was going to move out to LA and I was going to start to make, my fated movie career happen.
Yeah.
But the second I went out there, I was sort of very shell shocked by, the separation between the sort of picture they paint, and the reality of just being out there, and your realization that it's just another place. It's, it's not some kind of, fantasy realm. it's just like, and things are very difficult for people out there. And, you know, and it's like, and so, like I said, kind of my fault because I went out there by myself, so it was very easy to kind of get scared off. But I think that this movie does a good job of sort of illustrating why people are out there. You know, the fact that it's this hive of, you know, sort of people who are interested in art and being in entertainment and pursuing their dreams, but at the same time, there's something also kind of cold and intimidating about it. So I think it's a nice balance.
And I think that especially, I mean, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I assume you have this show. I mean, somebody who's a creative type and who's interested in making something and who's interested in doing things. I feel like so many of what they both go through, especially at the beginning, amidst all of this fantasy, and in the end too. I mean, I think like I'm not always rooted in realism when it comes to the things I want to make and the things I want to do. And it's cool to watch other people experience that in a way that really hits home for me, as, you know, my little like podcast dreams are being, you know, coming to fruition. But I like that it's just this whole, like, they need to be close to whatever the action is happening. So she's working at the coffee shop on the lot, and he drives out of his way to be in front of the jazz club because they can't get in yet, but they just need to be there. And you want to move to LA for a little while because you're not in yet, but you just want to be part of the energy and be part of the thing that's happening. And I like that so much because I feel like, and I'm sure a lot of people watching as well just relate to that desire to be part of the thing and creatively fulfill your, I don't know, that like tick that you have to just be doing something and making something in a world that I think sometimes puts more value on making dollar bills for, you know, good reason probably sometimes. But
and I think that's, you know, a large part of why I'm even doing this, because especially since, you know, I started doing it during the pandemic. So it's like in a world where you couldn't go anywhere, like you're kind of forced to stay in place. This was my way of doing something with the things that I'm passionate about, you know, if not each week, at least, you know, every couple of weeks. And so, yeah, I think if you're passionate about something, you need that close contact with it, however that happens.
That outlet. So we get a lot of that in the movie, which I really like.
And somebody just mentioned that the movie starts with a traffic jam, which I feel like is very much, you know, fitting for a movie about you know, Los Angeles.
And all the Priuses, everyone has a Prius. That's also
my God, that was hilarious. It's a Prius. That doesn't really help me. But no, the traffic, I remember when I went to LA, I described it as like, even when you were driving on the highway, even if you were going like full speed, you were somehow still in traffic because it was like, it was practically bumper to bumper, even when everybody's moving. It's insane.
Right. Everyone's like tailing everybody. Yeah.
But I do love that, like, you have that whole opening number. It's called Another Day of Sun, and then it says the title, and the next subtitle says Winter.
Yeah. A winter in LA is not so bad, you know. I don't know. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, so I like have to be biased against LA, you know. So I can't say anything good about it because I would betray my roots if I said
That's
anything
fair.
nice. So
but let's see, and we talked a little bit about that next musical number, the Someone in the Crowd. I don't know what I think. It's because like I said, I heard a lot of the songs first, so that was the one that really got stuck in my head, and I just like the way it builds up. It starts with like score in the background, and then they just start singing, and it's kind of about the whole, you know, obviously my my knowledge is limited, but from what I gather, the sort of the whole LA experience
We're experts, yeah.
of going to, all these parties and trying to, get your name out there with the right people and stuff.
Mhm.
And she's just had an audition go badly, and she's like, I'm not in the mood for this tonight.
Can you blame her? I
Yeah.
love the moment from that scene when she's in the bathroom and everything kind of quiets down and slows down as she's making her way in there and kind of has this moment with herself to regroup a little bit. I thought that was a really great.
And then her roommates like just bust in. It's like
Yeah.
all the quiet goes away and the noise is just like charging
Right.
in.
Makes me miss college a little bit, back in the day when I was living with millions of girls all trying to go to parties all the time.
Well, that's funny because I never had that experience myself because I've always like been so solitary, and so like I went to a local college, so I was always just sort of driving from home.
Sure.
But it's funny, like I feel like I'm sort of now preparing to have that experience because like obviously there aren't cons happening in the immediate future, but like provided Here Be Con goes forward, like we're all going to be staying in the same place, and like and Steven and I have talked about every time we thought a con was coming around, we were going to room together, and and all that. So in a way I feel like I'm having the sort of college experience with all of my fandom friends
100%.
and so it's that kind of vibe. Just hopefully it happens someday soon.
It will someday. Someday. As someone who's had both the college experience, the like classic college experience and the convention experience, I can attest to the fact that they're pretty much the same. So you'll get your fill and your fix just a little bit on a different time frame.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, Guilty Undertaker, I know I don't think we're seeing quite eye to eye on a number of things with this movie, but I will sort of agree that I think the score is sort of the backbone of this movie, and it's less about the musical numbers, even though I find them incredible, but they're all kind of born out of this wonderful musical score, which I was glad at the very least that even if there were some surprises on Oscar night that year, at least it did win for Best Music, because I think the score to the film is absolutely incredible. And everybody's and right now everybody's like, oh, finally he's going to talk about the score, because that's what I talk about like
that's your
all
thing.
the time. That's my thing. But it's great, especially because I feel like there's so many film scores nowadays that are more based on sort of mood and kind of there's just as many electronic scores as there are like pure orchestral, and this is like such old-fashioned music driven through the score, and I just remember like that's why listening to the CD I was like, oh, this is so my jam.
You're like fist pumping in the car to those opening notes of that song. I can see that makes a lot of sense.
Oh my god, I have driven crazy so many of my friends throughout the years, and like I'm not talking about the people here, I'm talking about like my friends from like my teenage years and since then, because I would like actually I would torture my friends with like blasting Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in the car. And like, I'd be the type, like if another car like came by with like the pounding bass and, I'd like roll down the windows and blast movie music and like, see, how do you like?
Yeah, you got, I mean, you're vibing just as hard as they are,
Exactly.
So it's just a little bit different. Totally. I'm not like a score person like you are by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that this one in particular, I'm not even going to pretend to see them also. I can't. Rooming together, spooning. Yeah, it is a con. Put that do not disturb sign up before you go to bed.
Exactly.
But now I lost my train of thought completely. Those just like those handful of notes evict so much emotion, and I feel like you're saying they're such a backbone. It's almost like they're another character in and of itself, and it's like its own kind of secondary, tertiary character, like weaving its way through the narrative and kind of tying everything together.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments of the movie is just when, Mia is on that horrible date, with the guy she's seeing, and it's like, oh my God, and that whole conversation that the other couple is having with him, where they're like, hey, yeah, and who wants to go to the movie theater anymore? And it's like, it's the complete opposite of Sebastian's whole thing, where he's like, talking about, the whole conversation they've been having about like Hollywood and the magic of the movies, and the fact that, Mia just has that moment where she says, I love it. It's like,
yeah, she sighs.
It's like, for someone who is that immersed in the cinema world, how can you possibly be sitting there with the guy who's talking about how dirty movie theaters are and all that stuff. It's like, girl, just
get out. Yeah, exactly. It's like, do you want to be rich with this? I assume he seems like he gives off rich bro energy. Do you want to be rich, or do you want to, have passion and shared enthusiasm with somebody?
But no,
what I was question.
Yeah, what I was going to say about the music in that scene is, I just love when she starts to, hear, or at least thinks that she's hearing, Sebastian's music, through like the speaker, but it just builds and builds, and then she's like, I'm sorry, and she just runs out of there, and the music erupts, and as she's running out, you see things like flying through the air. It's so like old Hollywood magic,
and the way she's running too, because she's like kind of floating down the street in her heels, and he's standing. She stands in front of the movie screen, and she's got all of that plastered on her face. It's dreamy, and I'm so glad she did it.
Yeah, both sides of that shot are great, when it's like her silhouetted against, where the light of the screen is like coming past her, and we just see her standing on the stage, and then the flip side of that, which you were just saying, with the actual picture, like over her face as she's looking for him, and then he stands up and they both smile at each other. It's like, oh, it's so beautiful.
In all of their individual flaws, which I've seen some in the comments, I'm not going to argue with some of those. It's like we've been saying, their chemistry together is so believable, and their love story and the emotion and being swept up away in what they have connected on. I mean, I buy into it heart and soul, and my heart's racing as she's running down the street, and you think she's going to miss it. And he's standing outside of the theater, and he kind of like looks at the ticket guy and is like, I don't know, kind of thing. But as someone who's never worn heels, can you actually run that way in heels? I would say, yeah, sure. Maybe not as gracefully, but it's a skill. So anyway, it's so hard not to get caught up in the excitement of, you feel like you're falling in love too, you feel like you've got those butterflies too, just because their chemistry is so out of control.
And that's sort of, it's one of the things that I really love most, and especially, sort of cinematic love stories. Everybody's going to be taking a drink now because I'm mentioning Pride and Prejudice. Because I always find a way to work Keira Knightley into the conversation. But just a thing about that movie is that part of what's so great about it is it makes you sort of want to fall in love. It has that emotion about it. and it's, you know, the same thing with this movie, where it just fills your heart with so much joy, because you feel that sensation of falling in love. And like, there are few things that get like my heart sort of racing faster watching movies. So
yeah. And I love how, and this has a lot to do with the score and a lot to do with kind of how that's woven in narratively. You're bought in from the very beginning of their story together, which makes the end so heartbreaking. And so I just feel like those butterflies, as you're describing, we've got them, and then you're kind of carrying that with you and rooting for them the whole time, just hoping that they'll be able to talk it out or figure it out. And then he doesn't make it to her show, and they have that fight at the car, but then he shows up at her house and he remembers these details about her, and but it still doesn't work out. You know, it's just this like heartbreaking thing after being on such a high from that fantasy musical, big, grandiose, falling in love kind of scenes. The letdown is why we all left the theater sobbing. So they do a good job of giving us emotional whiplash.
No pun intended, because the director of this movie also did Whiplash, which I haven't seen, because every time I see stuff from that movie, and I'm always like, that does not look like it's a pleasant experience to sit through.
It was I think you should watch it. As somebody who likes movies, I think you should put yourself through the torture.
Yeah, I feel like I will at some point. It just feels like I'm gonna be, you know, feeling really sad.
Yeah. Probably. Probably.
But like, and the only issue with sort of these love stories that end up, you know, not, you know, working out. I mean, I feel like both characters do come to good places by the end of the story, but unfortunately, you know, their love, you know, their relationship doesn't last. And I feel like with a lot of movies like that, it's like, I'm just wanting like an extended version where we get more of that middle chunk of happiness,
right?
Of pure happiness. Like, just let that go on for long,
instead of that little montage that we get of
exactly.
Them. Yeah, I had that same thought of like, I wonder what they're talking about, because I bet it's funny and witty and interesting, and they obviously meant a lot to each other. And so
it always feels like with these movies, it's like, just once your heart soars, you know it's not going to last very long,
right?
And you have to get ready for the heartbreak.
But what I like so much about their love story is it's realistic, and I love how they didn't end up together, but there was no hard feelings between them. They still, that last look that they have just absolutely kills me. Yeah, they achieved their dreams, but not together, but they helped each other kind of get into the space where they could do that, and they believed in each other, and they helped each other grow. And I think that it's cool to see on screen in such a grandiose way a relationship that still has meaning and depth and importance, but it didn't work out, and that's okay. I think that happens sometimes, and I like that it doesn't have to be so black and white all the time. It can be filled with gray area and still matter, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like, even though it is extremely bittersweet, there is still a sort of joyous, maybe not joyous, may not be the right word, but a satisfied feeling that comes from the end of the film, especially with the way the music comes in and you get that explosive orchestral moments with the, you know, the end title, and then it goes into that orchestral version of Another Day of Sun for the, you know, end credits. It's like, I love everything about it. But saying I want to hang with the first half of the movie until we do the mid-roll, and then we can wallow in misery for the second half of the story. But you know, at the theater, like, you know, after she arrives and they sit down, it's just like, then you've got that moment of the hand holding where their hands just creep bit by bit over towards, and they're both like glancing down, and like that kind of stuff. It's like, Oh, I just love it. And then right as, the romance is, happening, then the film reel burns up. And they
It's
just
so
start,
frustrating. Yeah, you're
yeah.
like, dang it.
And then it's like it goes. I think what's doubly frustrating is it stops like that romantic moment, but then it's also like it goes back to the conversation being had by the other people where it's like, oh, that's right, theaters kind
Yeah.
of like are not like always the best experience
Yeah, but
because you're
that's
gonna have
fun.
technical
That's like
flubs.
yeah, you want the
But that's
stickiness on your
but
shoes,
that's like
when you're
part of it,
sitting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the experience kind of
Like if
thing.
you're if
So,
you're going to like a projected film showing of something, you're taking the risk that something's
yeah.
going to happen to the movie while you're watching it. It just like
Right.
I can't recall the number of times that I went to go see movies, film projected back in the day, and like halfway through the movie, it would get flipped up, turned upside down,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like the bottom half would be on the top, and it's like you'd
Or
have
the
to run.
wrong movie would
Yeah,
play or something. Yeah. Yeah.
and you'd have to
Totally.
run out there and be like, yeah, something's wrong with the movie. Can you
Yeah.
fix it?
Yeah. It's part of the
I
magic of it all, you know?
And actually, when I went to LA, I had bought tickets for The Godfather Part 2, which I was really excited about. And
Yeah.
then I got there and they only had the second half of the movie after the
Oh.
intermission. It's like,
Well, this reminded me though, talking about the movie theater experience, I saw this movie. I'm sure they do this in lots of places, but at one of the theaters here in DC, they had a live orchestra playing and then they had the movie projected. And so everybody brought a picnic and you watched the movie and then there was a live orchestra playing the music behind the whole thing. And it was such a magical I've seen Prisoner of Azkaban and I've seen La La Land live musical. So I guess however next movie I see in that format will be the one that I talk with you on the show.
oh,
But
that's funny.
it's a cool experience.
No, I got to go back in, I think it was 2009. I went to New York and saw Fellowship of the Ring that way with the orchestra playing it, and actually got to get that weekend was a whole experience because I got to get my autograph signed by Howard Shore, the composer, and also the night before that, Billy Boyd, who played Pippin, and his band were playing at a nearby pub, and I went to go see that. I got my picture taken with them and everything. So,
Fun.
like, yeah, that was just a great experience, and I cannot believe that was 12 years ago.
Right? Time is fake. Time is
Yeah.
absolutely fake.
But yeah, no, that's so funny that both of the movies that you've seen like that are Prisoner of Azkaban and La La Land.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a cool experience though. If anybody has a chance to see that or to experience that, it's a really even if it's for something you don't particularly love. I mean, I've been lucky enough to, and you have as well, to do it for movies that mean a lot to us, but it's just a new viewing experience that I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I will say that one of my favorite memories from that experience was going, because it was at Radio City Music Hall, and was walking in there, and I was going with my mom because she also loves the movies. And by the way, sorry everybody, I feel like I'm losing my voice, so just stick with me a bit. But one of the kids who was performing in the choir, very young kid, was like walking past us, and they were like, are you going to see the Lord of the Rings? And we were like, yes. And they were like, I'm singing in that. I'm singing in that. It was just like, he was so excited.
That is sweet.
Yeah. And there were so many people in the audience, kids who had actually never seen the film before and were seeing it for the first time like that. But it also made me feel old. Like,
of course,
these kids were not alive when I originally saw this film. That's a problem.
That's one time I had like a similar experience where I spoiled Dumbledore's death for a little kid about Harry Potter, and it was just that same realization as like everybody knows that you weren't alive, and now I'm old. I've aged myself so deeply, and so it's the same thing. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of funny. Time doesn't. That's the theme of this stream. Time means nothing. We don't know anything.
Exactly. But anyway, so then, the next little bits before the intermission, as I say, is, when they go to the Griffith Park Observatory, which was really cool watching that because, like, I remember going there when I was in LA, and so it was just cool to see that. And I love that, like, all the sound effects kind of like drop out for that scene, and it's just the score playing over it. It just gives, like, we keep using this word, but this feeling of fantasy about the whole thing. And I just love the little movements, like when Ryan Gosling is just, walking through there, and he kind of takes his hand and wipes the thing. And it's just like their moves are like so deliberate and, going with the music, and it's just beautiful. And I do love the moment where they're just swept up into the air, and it's pure, again, fantasy, and and just the way they're dancing, up there, in the stars and everything. It's just like so romantic, and just, your heart gets caught in your throat just watching it. It's beautiful.
It's a much better place for a first kiss, Yeah. It's too bad that it didn't happen in the movie theater, but this is a much better setup for that. And I was reading, I was just like looking around on YouTube, because something I was curious about is I know that there's a lot of callbacks to older musicals and shows and kind of that whole genre throughout the duration of the movie. And apparently there's a couple of them here in this scene. And so, John, I'll have to send you the link to that YouTube video, because I thought it was really cool. They did like a side-by-side comparison of other performances that the producers harkened back on to kind of create that scene, including when they get swept up into the sky. Like, that's from something I can't remember, from like the 1940s. But anyway, I can share that link with you if anybody else might be interested, because it was cool to see all the cliches that it's drawn on as well, that kind of add to that emotional sweeping.
Yeah, I mean, and that doesn't surprise me in the least bit, because like when you're doing like a modern day musical that's reminiscent of all the sort of like Hollywood classic musicals, of course you're going to draw on like you're referencing those old musicals. And for people who know them a bit better, I'm sure that's just like a moment of, hey, I know that reference. Yeah,
exactly. So I thought that was a cool element.
Yeah, which I probably I might have caught on to some of that stuff if I had more recently seen some older musicals. Mm-hmm. I used to watch them like crazy when I was younger, which I think is why I love musicals in general so much.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in my class went as nuts over, say, Oliver, as I did. I was always singing all the music and stuff. And other people were like, what is wrong with you?
Right. Listen to something else kind of thing. You like Oliver, you like movie scores, things like that. But apparently there's a lot of callbacks to Singing in the Rain, which I haven't seen since I was a kid either in a very long time. But I think that there's just a lot of kind of those touch point moments, especially from Singing in the Rain, and then a list of other ones I couldn't remember. But it made me want to rewatch that, because, I would love to be able to pick up on those without having to know there's something there and go look for it. But that one's a big one that they played off of.
Oh, Laura, let up. This is about, it takes place in Hollywood with love of old movies. It's like they should be making references to.
That's the point.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point of the movie, is to kind of call back to what built the genre, I would say.
Yeah.
That's just me. Sorry, Laura, you can only type and we can talk. So come for us.
Exactly. But yeah, and and then it closes out with that wonderful kiss. The score, reaches its zenith, and we get that, that wonderful, irising out that closes in on them. And and then I'll go ahead and stop there, and we can do the mid roll. If anybody's watching for the first time, don't go anywhere. We're not done. We're just going to take a minute to talk about other stuff going on. I don't have anything scheduled for next week, everybody, because I'm taking things a little slower. And I actually will not be in town next weekend for reasons that I've already talked about. So, which I'm not going to say again because people will say I'm gloating. But I will be on Here Be Dragons tomorrow, and we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So nice. If you like that movie, go ahead and stop by. Even if you don't, stop by anyway. And then we got some other great stuff coming up in the coming weeks. I think next weekend they're going to be, I won't be there, but they'll be talking about the first couple episodes of What If, the new Marvel series. So be sure to check that out too. Hannah, I'll let you talk about whatever you have going on. I know you guys are nearing the end of your discussion of A Feast with Dragons, the combined reading order.
We have one more episode left on Game of Thrones for A Feast with Dragons, and then we are starting a new project, I guess you could say, in the next couple of weeks. So check out Game of Thrones. That episode will come out soon, and then we'll be on to the next thing as we prep for whatever comes next in the world.
Well, I assume it'll be a discussion of the Winds of Winter, since George can now release it, right? Since you guys are done with your discussion. I mean, that's
finally
that's what I've been
saying. Right? It has been the holdup, and so now he'll be gracious enough to give us breathing room to be able to.
Seriously, I have to talk about this because it is insane. You guys started that so long ago. It's been like this wonderfully epic journey.
I know, and it's been a little bit emotional for me because I think about where I was like as a person, and I'm sure you feel the same way, and you will continue to feel the same way as you continue to do your show. I was a different person when we started A Feast with Dragons, and so it's exciting to kind of bring that insight and expertise. And like you said, it's exciting that George R. R. Martin can finally release Winds of Winter because we're ready. So
I just remember when you guys started it, you were like, I can't remember if you guys were concerned about him releasing it before you finished, or whether it would what you would do if it wasn't out still when you had finished. And it just seemed like, well, even then it seemed like, well, it's got to be out by then. But I don't think I had even contemplated how long this project would actually take you guys. So I thought for sure it would have been released before.
Me too. I was more concerned that we wouldn't be able to finish it, and I was stressed about that prospect, especially because I think we had 2 seasons of the show in the middle as well, which takes up a ton of episode time, so we weren't doing the reading order while the show was on. So it's been a journey, but I'm really looking forward to kind of diving into something else and once again starting on a new project as we inch towards Winds of Winter, whenever that might be. I mean, my biggest fear now is that we're going to do every piece of material and then we still don't have a book. And it's like, well, do we just start over from the beginning? I don't know. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Well, yeah, because I mean, for me personally, like, I remember when I think it was after season 3 of the show was over, and I had listened to everything you guys had done for that, and then I was like, but I want more of them, talking, stuff. But you guys were already. I don't even remember if you were on the podcast yet, because I think you might not have been. But I remember I went back to start with the Game of Thrones discussion and stuff like that, and just had a great time. But that's it. If you weren't there for that, that's precedence for you guys starting over at the beginning.
That's what we've said. I didn't join until we were like halfway through book 3, so it was right after season 5. Because Zach asked if I wanted to be on the show right after season 5, and I was like, I don't know. After season 5, I was not really feeling it, and I was like, I don't know if I could talk about Game of Thrones, and when I'm kind of a little disillusioned, which is so funny to look back now that I had enough gripes with season 5 to be like, well, but then we get season 7 and 8. But yeah, so it's been a journey.
Yeah, we won't go too far in depth into that conversation.
Yeah, because you and I disagree.
Yeah. Although I will say I could understand how you would feel that way coming off season 5, because even though I choose to look at a lot of the really great stuff to come out of that season, it is, in my opinion, it's probably the weakest. There's some stuff that just doesn't work, admittedly.
Well, and our expectations are so high after you finish seasons 1 through 4, and so it's hard to.
But yeah, we'll leave that right there.
You have to come on Game of Bones sometime, and we can have those discussions.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. But no, I just at this point, I just have to take the time to heap praise upon you guys, because you guys were, no kidding, part of my experience of watching the show. I would not go to bed, at least on the times when you guys were doing when you guys were recording, right after the episode aired and dropping it that night. My night wasn't finished until you guys put out that episode, and I listened, because it was part of the experience of watching the show. Awesome. And that joy has continued, just listening to you guys talk about the books and everything. So just thank you for all the hard work you guys put in.
Yeah, of course, that's sweet of you. And I mean, we do it, and I do it because we get to meet people like you and get to share that experience. And I can't go to bed until I've fully analyzed it either. And so grateful that we got to meet each other because of that. So yeah, I appreciate it.
And you and also I have to thank you, because if not for you guys, Laura and I would not have met up at the first Con of Thrones, and that has yielded so many wonderful rewards, and now she's part of our group over on Here Be Dragons. And so
that's the whole point, is we have to find each other so that we're not floating aimlessly alone. So I love that. Exactly.
And apparently there was another sighting. People have been saying that we have not been addressing the appearance on screen.
This is my friend Scotty's dog, Rigby. I don't know anything about him. I've been dog sitting him for 24 hours, and he's barked 20% of the time, but we've gone on some walks, and I can't tell you any fun facts about him because I don't know him, but he's hanging out in my house. So that's my dog. That's why I haven't brought him up, because what can I say about him? I'm dog sitting. So, but he's a little cutie. He is a little sweetie.
Okay. Yeah. So now we can probably go ahead and dive into
the depressing part.
It's not immediately depressing, but it's but yeah, it gets sad. We get to start off with this wonderful bit where Ryan Gosling is honking his horn, and is that going to happen every time? Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and then a beautiful montage of happy times, and him performing at a jazz club and all that. And but then, reality starts to set in, and there's this
Because we
whole bit
meet
about,
freaking John Legend. That's
yeah,
when all the trouble starts.
which I love in the, who, by the way, does a really great job. Um,
Yeah.
Both, of course, his singing is great, even though I will say, like, the concert bit, that song, I'm trying to, I I don't remember the name of the song. I'll bring it up, but obviously that's not sort of my favorite musical bit, because it is very sort of, it's supposed to be, sounding very produced, and and sort of modern, but that's sort of the whole
Right.
thing. I don't think he's necessarily wrong, in terms of wanting to push, the you know the medium forward, and
Sure.
all that, because especially since he has a successful band, and they're talking about trying to reach out to younger people, but that's not what Sebastian actually wants, like,
Right.
for himself, and he abandons what he's actually passionate about, because he has this notion in his head, which is wrong, that he needs to, like, abandon his dreams to make sure he's providing, and all that. But again, just talk to her, and
I know.
find out what
I
she
know.
actually wants.
Have a conversation. I agree with you. That's probably my least favorite part of the movie. I just think that I don't know if it's because I don't find the music catchy, or if it's because I don't like that he's doing something that he so easily should know that he doesn't need to be doing. But I always kind of, that to me, that's like where the movie slumps a little bit, is that those like 10 or 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, okay, the song is called Start a Fire. Like, I know that watching that, first of all, I know Sebastian doesn't like that music, and as someone who's more rooted in sort of, classical style music, and musical scores, and old fashioned stuff, like that is not my taste either. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, Sebastian, just start your club, and do your thing. That's what you actually
Yeah.
want to do. But yeah, so it's just, unfortunately, things start to uh take
A turn.
yeah, well, like, yeah, but here's the thing: Seb doesn't have to be a jazz legend.
Right.
um like, Sebastian just likes the music that he likes, and I think by the end of the movie he comes to realize that he needs to do what he's passionate about, and it's just like Mia says, people will come into your circle to, if you're demonstrating your passion for something.
100%. I love that line.
Yeah,
But
and
we all have to sell out a little bit, to fulfill our dreams. I gotta work my corporate job so I could do my podcast, like,
yeah,
so I get that a little bit. But and I mean, like, his sister was like, you can't pay your bills off of being shanghaied, like being romantic about all of your problems. You can't, that doesn't put food on your table. And I think that he needed a little bit of a kick to eventually finally actually have the ability to open up his club. And so I think that while he and Mia maybe should have had a conversation about it more
yeah,
openly and more broadly, it was probably the right move for him to have that experience and to get those dollar bills a little and have that opportunity as a musician so that he could then fulfill his dreams. I feel like we all got to sell out a little, right?
yeah.
Maybe
I
for
feel
this
like
movie.
his mistake there is not so much that, like, it paid well, like, that's it's good, like, money to provide for yourself and for the people that you care about, that's a good thing. And to have that experience, and to maybe know that deep down that's actually not what he wants.
Yeah.
That's
You
like
should
an
try it out.
experience that you should probably have. Where he goes wrong is making assumptions about what she wants, and
Exactly.
justifying his decisions because of that assumption.
Exactly.
You know what they say about assumptions. It's just like, so yeah, he makes definite mistakes there, and then he gets defensive about that
Mhm.
error in judgment during their big blow up scene, which is so gut wrenching to watch.
Yeah.
It's a great scene, but I dread watching it like every
It's
time.
frustrating. It's frustrating because I sympathize with both sides so deeply. I mean, he is trying to do this thing and he asks her to come with him. You know, why can't you spend a night or two away and come support me? And we got to figure out a way to do this together. And for her, it's like, I don't see the point of any of this. I've got my own stuff coming and you're not supporting me either. It's just logistics. How often do logistics get in the way of relationships, and just like life, and nothing to do with necessarily how you feel about each other, but just the fact that you have to be a person on the planet and you have to navigate and communicate clearly through logistics. And so to watch that unfold and to hear them talking past each other is, I feel like we've all been there. Like I've been on both sides of those conversations. And so it's like, it makes it difficult to watch because there's that long silence that they have. And then the fire alarm goes off and it's just like the most realistic breakup scene. It's very realistic, which makes it hard.
Yeah. It's so tough. And in that moment where I can identify with so many beats in that scene, because it's not just like you don't just have those blow ups when it's like a romantic relationship and a blow up. I recognize that moment where where he says the thing about maybe you just liked having me around because
Yes.
I made you. It's like when you say stuff like that, like you're completely full of shit in the moment as you're saying it. You shouldn't be saying it, and it's your stupid, like, whether it's pride or just anger at yourself and all that stuff, and things like that come out, and you should immediately apologize for that, and it's just,
but he never gets the
yeah,
opportunity to, and it's just she walks out. And yeah, I mean, even like you said, it doesn't have to be romantic. I think like some of my biggest heartbreaks have been platonic breakups, with friends
yeah,
and things like that. And so it's, and again, I know we've said this a million times, but just the chemistry that they have on screen, we buy in heart and soul to this relationship that they have with each other, and to have to watch it fall apart simply because timing isn't working out, and not because they don't share the same passion and morals, and well, maybe not morals, isn't like goals. I mean, maybe they do share the same morals, but we don't really know about that. Goals and things like that, it's reality. It's reality.
yeah. And I will say, like, yeah, there's just some, like, I do sort of sympathize with both of them in that moment, but at the same time, it's like, dude, she has 2 weeks until her big thing. Maybe she doesn't want to be, practicing out on the road. Like,
it's funny. I'm on the opposite end. It's like she should just freaking go for 2 days. It can't be that big of a deal if she wants to save her relationship. But I think that she's been feeling abandoned for so long that, this is like a last ditch thing.
Yeah, because they haven't been together, like at all, except for like passing through the night, the type of thing. So, like, they're both already kind of on edge about that. So
when he comes home before this one, she's like looking at her phone, and he comes in the morning, and it's really early in the morning, and he's still in his suit, which is okay. Like and he crawls into bed and faces the wall. It's like, oh no, this is like, it's not going good. And then I think a few beats after that is her calling him, asking where, she doesn't even know where he is. I'm not I'm gonna know where my boyfriend is, what city he's in, at least. But she does, they very obviously haven't been communicating at all, and so then we get this.
Yeah, and I think, and part of what's so grueling about that scene is that it starts off so happy,
I
and,
know.
and cheerful, like she's overjoyed to see him there. He's being like surprise, and and it's just it starts off in a really good place, and you can just see
Yeah.
how beat by beat it degenerates into this, this explosive argument. And yeah, I
Do you
go ahead.
think? Do you think they could have, if he had been able to go to her show? Do you think that they would have been able to fix it, or do you think that the nail was already in the coffin after this fight?
I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to say that it would have been better, and that, like, if he was there in an extremely supportive capacity, which I believe he wanted
Mm-hmm.
to be, he just made a poor decision in terms of, like, he should have absolutely been like, no, I can't do this photo shoot tonight.
He
My
gave
role,
him the out. He gave him the
yeah,
out. He's like, "Does this work for you?" And he says, "Yes, anyways." And it's like, come on.
yeah. So if he had gone, I think she would have she still wouldn't have been feeling great after, because, you know, at least from her perspective, yeah, well, and not just her perspective, but barely anybody showed up, and she doesn't think that anybody important showed
Yeah,
up either. I think that she probably would have been feeling better about that whole scenario if he was there and being supportive, and it still wouldn't have been, I don't think she'd be doing super great, but I don't think that she would have necessarily taken off right then, and they would have still had to have addressed the argument and all that.
sure.
But I think it at least maybe would have prevented, you know, I'm driving off right now.
Right,
I'm leaving.
right.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. Like, that was a extremely poor decision on his part, because he did technically have an out, and he should have
Yes.
taken it.
I never noticed that until this watch through. I hadn't really, and whatever I'm bringing to this watch through is going to make that stand out more to me or not. But he asked them multiple times, "Can you, like, is this going to work for you?" And I know that it sucks to kind of have to back out on your commitments from a work perspective. And when you're caught up in relationship drama and you don't know how to fix it, or you don't want it to affect like your job or your day to day, I get that. But I mean, it's just like that's like the worst thing he could have done in that situation, is miss that. That's the worst thing he could have done. Him going, it wouldn't have been like the montage at
Yeah,
all that we see at
no.
the end. But kind of like you were saying, she may not have driven off or in such a huff. I don't know. But it's just too bad that that was the thing that kind of sealed the deal, because it
Well,
could have been avoided.
I think the thing is, and ironically, something similar has been on my mind the past couple of days, because I've been listening to a whole lot of like podcasts um about the Star Wars animated show The Bad Batch, which
Mm.
sounds completely unrelated. I won't get into specifics about that, because there's people watching this who haven't seen the show yet, but it's sort of the similar thing across many different Star Wars stories, with sort of the whole, thing with even looking at, like, for instance, Kylo's story in the sequel trilogy of, you know, and even Darth Vader, like, sort of once you start heading down one path, it kind of ends up informing the actions that you take.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've already screwed this up, so let's just keep digging that hole deeper.
Right. Right.
And it's kind of a similar thing here, where it's like, you got a really easy choice ahead of you, man. make it, but it's like, when things are already screwed up, it kind of interferes with your judgment, and
You're already spiraling.
yeah.
So yeah. Ugh.
Uh,
It's realistic. It's like you've been saying. It's
yeah.
realistic. So
yeah. And then I think we even get like a montage after that where, you know, things are happening. Like she goes home and it shows him like uh, performing, yeah, at his sister's wedding and everything. So some time passes and we get to when he receives the phone call about, you know, a casting, you know,
yeah.
director who, and he's like, wait, casting?
Yeah.
And that's when we get some lights and fun again. Because I just love the fact that he shows up, like doesn't know exactly where her house is, but
Lays on the horn.
and then their whole conversation when you know he says, you know, so and so, the casting director called, she's doing a big movie and she wants you to audition, and the way she's like, I'm not going to that.
Yeah,
No.
I mean,
And
can you blame her?
then his response of, sorry for me listening in, I'll back up a little bit, where he goes, what?
Yeah.
It's really loud.
And he screams at her. Well, they broke up, but they still have this mutual respect for each other and for helping them accomplish each other's dreams. And we'll get to that conversation that they have at the observatory at the end, but or in like a couple scenes after the audition. But I like that they have this pretty sad breakup, and he's still, you know, he's right there with her. He's like, you can't back out now. You've worked so, I mean, he didn't say this, but the undertone of you've worked so hard to get to this point, and I know that you feel like it's going to break you, and it might, but this is your big chance. This is your big opportunity, and I'm going to believe in you and be next to you every step of the way and be extremely obnoxious the whole time, but you'll have my support. And then we get one of the best scenes in the movie, which is her audition.
Yeah, it's just, and this is him as he should be in this, you know, where he's got his focus back. He realizes, you know, he needs to be there for her in this moment and give her, you know, the push that she needs, and try and repair some of the damage that, you know, is, you know, not entirely his fault, but a good deal of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, yeah. So it's just, it's really great. I love her going, you know, that part where he's like, you know, why don't you want to do this anymore? And in the way she is sort of fumbling her words, and she's like, maybe because I'm one of those people who, you know, and she's,
yeah,
you know, fumbling through her words, and she's like, because maybe I'm not good enough. You know, maybe I'm not. And there's just, oh my God, there's just such like honesty and realism in her sort of desperation as she's saying all the stuff. Just that, all that self-doubt is just, again, like so much of this movie is dealing with real feelings and real emotions, and like I think anybody who sort of has had aspirations to be in any kind of artistic field like totally feels those emotions that she's verbalizing
yes,
in that scene. Like, what's the point? This isn't going to work out. Why should I put myself up, you know, for that kind of heartbreak?
It reminds me of this quote that I probably saw like on Tumblr in 2012. So forgive me that I don't remember who said it, but there's these lines that says something along the lines of like, find what you love and let it kill you and let it drain you of everything you have. I think about that all the time and I think that she's experiencing that right now. Is so much of those creative pursuits, you're giving your heart and soul, and she put everything on hold and everything into her last show. And I think that burnout almost of being tired of giving yourself and your energy and your talents and your creativity and so much of you that goes into this very outwardly facing passion. I who wouldn't sympathize? Anybody who's, has any sort of slightly creative preferences. I think you go through that all the time. It's like, what's the point anymore when she's like, I could just go back to school and become an accountant or whatever. No disrespect to accountants, but I could, just go down a very specific path that it's already laid out for me. I don't need to be putting myself through this all the time. I get it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just, I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's what encourages me. I don't want to make this stream all about me and my, my dreams.
I'm curious about them, so yes.
Well, no, it's just like, I think that for a while now, I've kind of been in a place of sort of being okay with being comfortable and just sort of controlling things directly around me, and not, the pandemic has made it easier to be honest, but like not going out of my way to try and chase things that I sincerely doubt may happen. I mean, I want with all my heart and soul to be involved in movies, either in I think directing would probably kill me. But I, at the very least, I very strongly want to be a film editor. That's where a lot of my passion has been. But it's like, sometimes it's just like, can't I just be comfortable and not put myself through that? But then at the same time, like, I felt sort of the same way about, on a different level, my social life and reaching out to other people. But then baby steps that I've taken over the past number of years have led me to this wonderful new world of being involved in, things with people, of doing not one but two YouTube streams with some pretty awesome people, and having friends that I now consider my family. So it's like, is that not sort of the same thing where you don't know which little steps are going to lead to bigger things? So
I was going to say, you got to rewatch this movie again if you didn't walk away from it ready to pursue all your dreams. Yeah,
exactly.
You've seen it work in the past, but it's hard. I mean, this is like, Guilty Undertaker has a great comment. It's like she gets her first big break because she's doing her own thing and just like sincerely, genuinely wants to be doing what she's doing. And Sebastian gets the same exact thing. And I think that it's really hard to put yourself out there, and it's really easy to be comfortable. And I'm giving myself a pep talk. It's really easy to be comfortable, and it's really easy to kind of phone it in a little bit and just skate by. But as you're talking about stepping out of your comfort zone and gaining friends and like putting yourself out there, I mean, I think about like from the difference from when I met you to now. Your life was cool then, but it's cool to have seen you do the things that you talked about wanting to do and to make them a reality, because it's, I think maybe someday down the road you can look back and think how these were the beginning stages of putting into your ultimate dream of doing movies, and then who knows what dreams might come after that. So I'm very inspired by this movie.
and this is really off topic, but I just remember when we were at GeekyCon, and I said to you, even then, I was like, it was so great seeing, because that was predominantly a Harry Potter convention, and I think we were coming out of, like, I don't remember if it was actually the whole weekend kind of melds together for me, but
it was a while ago.
But I remember, like, there was the one night where everybody like gathered around in a big circle, and it was just like it radiated this love for like the whole fandom and this shared bond you guys all had. And I remember saying at the time, I wish there was something like that for like Lord of the Rings or something that I was like super passionate into. But now I've found that, and it hasn't been around one thing in particular. I mean, it kind of started from Game of Thrones, but it's about a whole bunch of different things. And so, yeah, it's just really great when, you know, you see yourself in one place from a couple of years back, and then, you know, things that you had said, oh, wouldn't that be great? When they actually do come to fruition, it's really
exciting,
rewarding. Yeah.
And I remember that conversation well, and being like, if what you want isn't there, then you just have to make it, you know, then you decide for it. And that's exactly kind of to that comment that was pasted before. It's when they were doing what was in their heart and what was best for them that they saw success and results. And when they were doing something, pretending to be something else, it's when it was more of a struggle.
Yeah. And of course, so they do go, and Mia, you know, does her audition, which is, you know, relayed to us, the audience, in the form of the beautiful musical number. Just, I love the way that everything kind of just fades out around her, and it's just, you know, her face, and she's singing about her, was it her aunt, I think, and about, you know, I remember, you know, one of the lines is, you know, the fools who dream, which I feel is like, you know, kind of what we've been talking about. But it's, you know, it's just so great. And I really feel like, you know, if you want to talk about whether, you know, the actors were up for, you know, singing in the film or not, I think that for me, like, this is an absolute home run for Emma Stone. She really gets a chance to sort of, you know, quote unquote, belt out, you know, in this scene, and it's so good. Yeah, I love it, and it just, you get that excitement of, this is someone who's actually getting an opportunity to, like, she's being presented with a, you know, possibility to achieve her dream, and this is in this moment, and she's giving it her all, and
it made me think really back exciting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
It made me think back to when she and Sebastian, when he meets her on the lot and they are walking around, and he's telling her, I can't remember exactly the conversation, but she's basically saying the world doesn't need more actresses. I mean, like, she kind of makes some snarky comment about that. And then here we are with her at the end, and she's singing about how, you know, bring on the painters and poets and plays, like, bring on the arts and bring on the expression, because we're always going to need that, and we're always going to want that. And I think, like, so much of the world, we interface with the world so much through, like, this whole conversation we're having now is how through art. And I think her tonal shift there in kind of realizing that this is worthwhile and I can make a difference, and, like, my aunt changed things for me. I think it just kind of adds into something that I just randomly was thinking about as we were talking about. It just kind of adds into the beauty of that moment. And her just, like, random sweater, like, she's just wearing weird clothes and she's just standing there and she doesn't know what to expect, and then this just comes straight from her heart. And I think that I love listening to that song. Whenever I need, like, a little inspo, I put it on and get amped up again.
I will say, like, the entire circumstance of that audition, like, terrifies me when I watch it, because they're like, just tell us a story. You're a storyteller. I'm like,
what? My brain would completely, I'd be like, oh, my name's Hannah, you know, I would not know what to say. That's why we are not actors, you know, that's why we sit behind our microphone, behind our computer, and that's good enough for us.
Yeah, I am not good, like, when like, I'm put under
on
pressure
the spot
to be on the spot to come up with something spontaneously, like,
that's what we were saying before we started recording. I was like, I'm nervous because I never go live, and you're like, I go live all the time. But it's the same kind of thing of, like, I can't, whatever I say, can't edit it out, you know? So you got some of that because you do this live all the time, which is a bold move.
Yeah, but it's like, I have a similar structure each time I do this. Like I'm
Yeah.
talking about a movie, so it's in my wheelhouse. Like,
And you can't really say anything wrong necessarily, you know?
yeah, I remember I had an experience when, because I actually applied to film school. I was going to say a few years ago. It's probably longer than a few years ago
A
now.
decade.
Yeah. But like, I thought I was doing like really good in the interview and everything, but then they had this portion where they brought in like a group of us, and we had all sort of work together on coming up with some kind of a story. Like, I'm not good with that. I very easily like sort of faded into the background of the group,
Yeah.
where I tried to chime in with a couple things, but I was like, if you were looking for a person to X out of the group, it was very obviously me.
Aww.
So I didn't get in, but it's like, that's the thing. Like this, I do each week, a little less so now, but I'm in a routine, so I know what to do. If you throw me for a loop and like ask something completely different, I'll like clam up, and it's like I have no idea what I'm doing, dude.
Yeah, I get that 100%.
Yeah, but no, it's like, but she does a really great job. It's easier when it's conveyed to like us, the audience, as a musical,
right,
a sequence.
right.
It's like, that was really damn good because it was music.
Right.
But no, it does go good. And then there's that scene that you were talking about where they're just talking about, what they're gonna do, and I think it's a shame, because I think it's because there's been so much about their relationship that's been rocky, that I don't think like they can do like in the fantasy sequence where he goes with her off to wherever. I think if they were in a better place, maybe that could have happened, but he knows that she's going to have to give it everything,
and they can't do both right now. Yeah. When she says, she's like, I'm always gonna love you, he's like, I'm always gonna love you too. It's like, okay, I feel fine. But that whole it's harking back to that conversation we had earlier with their fight. I mean, it's logistics is what it came down to at the end of the day. She's gonna get the part, and she's gonna leave, and he's gonna stay here and figure out his club, and they'll always love each other, but we're at a crossroads. So we don't have what it takes to make it happen. It's really sad.
Yeah. And then he's like, and we'll just have to see. Like, so there's the hope in the moment that, who knows? Unfortunately,
it's the only way to cope, really, in those scenes.
But then, unfortunately, we cut to the 5 years later, and not unfortunate for her, because she seems very happy, but she's married, and and as the audience who's been rooting for Mia and Sebastian for the whole time, our heart kind of sinks.
Well, because you're like thinking maybe this is it, they figured it out, and then she goes in to kiss him, and it's like, no, she has a kid with this guy. I'm sure he rules, but we don't know anything about him. So yeah.
Although I will say that, and I don't know if this is a reference that like too many people will appreciate, but her husband is played by Tom Everett Scott, who was in That Thing You Do. He played the main character in that movie. So it's like, and that was like, when I was younger, that was a favorite movie of mine, and I loved the music in that film too. So like, and he played such a lovable character in that movie. And so when I see that, I'm like, oh, I don't hate him.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. They have a good life together too. So
yeah.
But
then we get the montage. It's she goes in, and oh my god, in the moment where they go down in there and she sees the Seb's sign, and it's like, and then the moment when he sees her, and it's just,
I think that like the one of the biggest heartbreaks that are the hardest parts about ending relationships, whether those are familial or romantic or platonic, is the what if part, and is the aching or missing what you were supposed to have and what it was supposed to be like, and how things, the life you were supposed to lead together. And so I think that that's what makes that whole scene so sad, is just the being able to actually physically see in that moment, kind of flashing before their eyes as this song is playing, and they're face to face in this club that he finally opened. She's a famous actress and he finally has his club, and they can take a moment to reminisce on, well, you know, this is what it could have been, and this is what it quote unquote should have been in a different reality if things had worked out between us. And I think that that is more heartbreaking than anything that they could have done to each other. It's just missing out on the life and adventures that they could have shared together, you know?
Yeah, I want to throw up Cassie's thing. I don't agree really, because I think that the whole epilogue is really beautiful, and especially, you know, the montage that we're talking about, the what
Right.
if. I think there's something so beautifully tragic about seeing, you know, how things could have unfolded under like the very, like, it's not even how things would have unfolded under the best of circumstances, but rather it is sort of the dream like scenario of, you know,
Right.
of, you know, if, you know, everything could have gone down in the most, you know, wonderful way possible, even starting with that. You know, I just love the way that sequence starts off with, you know, when we see the restaurant scene again, and she walked up and she's like, I just heard you play, I want to say, and then it,
Yeah.
you know, this big Hollywood romantic kiss, and then everybody starts snapping their fingers as
Yeah.
the music starts up. And then you even get J.K. Simmons, who was a grouch earlier in the movie, and he starts doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, like, I'm never not gonna see him as J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man.
I've never seen Spider-Man.
What? No.
I know.
Oh, but yeah, no. In those movies, he's like, you know, I want pictures of Spider-Man, and you know,
Yeah.
he's just this very, you know, aggressive, you know, news journalist
I
type
can see that.
guy,
Yeah.
and so it blows my mind that you've never seen Spider-Man.
John, you would be surprised about the movies. I hadn't seen Lord of the Rings. I hadn't seen Lord of the Rings until November of 2020. So, you know, you can come for me, and
No,
I don't,
no,
I
no,
hate,
no, no,
I hate.
no.
I've seen them now, watch the extended version. I mean, I'm fully in, but there's a lot
Okay.
that I have missed out on that would break your heart.
We probably had this conversation the last time you were on here,
We
and
probably
you
did.
probably hadn't seen them yet, and I was probably like, you know,
Or I
heartbroken
lied
over
to
that.
you. Or I lied to you because I
Maybe,
didn't want to like confess. But
yeah, yeah. Who cares about the Spider-Man thing now?
right.
This has my full attention, but I'm glad you've seen them now. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so back to what we were talking about, it's like it just launches into this full, like,
Hmm.
gorgeous, you know, Hollywood musical number with the dancing and, you know,
Yeah.
and the great camera work. I mean, I just like, yeah, here's a couple pictures just to like give the choreography, and I love this part where they're like in the ballroom
Hmm.
and dancing. It's just like, yeah, at this point, if especially if movie musicals are, or musicals at all, are your thing, like this whole sequence is just like, I was just like, oh.
And it's harkening back to what we love so much about the first half of the movie, you
Yeah,
know? So I definitely, and it's cool to kind of see it. I feel like it's broken down even more. Whereas the first half of the movie was very realistic with, you know, the props and the scenery are seamlessly incorporated in a modern world. And then here at the end in this dream sequence, we get, I think, a little bit more of the cliches of what it might look like on a stage production, or what it might look like in the 50s or 60s or 70s. If it had been a production back then, we get some more of like the cutouts and the
when they
things like
walk
that.
out and like she's in a dress and he's in the white suit and like
Yeah.
she's going
Yeah.
through and like waving her hands through all the stuff. It's just like, and the whole, like a large chunk of this is on that set that they walk by in the earlier part of the movie, which is just so great to bring it back to that. And, and I just remember we were talking about the earlier musical numbers. We found a way to actually to skip over, the City of Stars, which is actually a big bit for this movie. First, it's sung by Ryan Gosling, on his own as he's walking through the pier, and I love the part where he just starts dancing with the guy's wife, and he's like, "Hey."
Gotta keep it interesting.
And then it's reprised later when it's like intercut between when we see things start to go downhill, but with the two of them at the piano, and it's just, again, their chemistry in that moment is great when they're sort of bouncing off each other with the lyrics and stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure we did throw that in there because
we couldn't
not talk about that. But yeah, just, and then you get like, it cuts from, all the, big musical number stuff to like, home footage of their life together and them having a child and all this stuff. And it lets your mind sort of wander to this area of, oh, things did work out. And like, but then it starts to build up to where, back to the club, and that's when your mind is like,
slows down and
like, no, this isn't right. And then it cuts back to reality, and just I weep like a baby, just,
I mean, I said this before, I cried. I have never cried like that in a movie theater before, and I don't know what it was. It just really struck a chord at the time. And while my sister and I were watching that movie, my other sister was going to see Fantastic Beasts for the first time. It had been out for a while, and so I was like, I've seen it 90 times. I don't need to see it again. So she comes out of Fantastic Beasts just like amped, ready. Let's talk Harry Potter. Let's go. And I'm come out of this and I'm just like, I am not in the right place. My mascara is running. I was like, I am not in the right headspace to talk about anything other than that love is not real, and that your soulmate might not be the one that you end up with, and that all of this kind of stuff. I mean, it's that music that we've been hearing, that those notes that come back into play again and kind of bring them back to reality. And then we get that look.
Because it starts and ends with their love theme, which has been recurring throughout the whole film, and which is the theme that she heard in her head in the restaurant, and that he played on the piano in the beginning. So it's one of those, I always say, like, as much as I love like very complex musical writing in something like, especially once you get into scores like, say, for instance, Lord of the Rings, which has a lot of very complex scoring with thematic work where you can like detect hints of Aragorn's theme and this other piece of music that's mixed with Gandalf's. So there's a lot of studying that can go on with music like that. But then sometimes when it comes to like romantic musicals, you want, more, I don't want to say simple, because that makes it sound like they're not genius, but more simplified, like sweeping themes that just recur throughout the film because it tugs at your heartstrings whenever you hear it. And this is a prime example of that. And just, he stops playing, and then they get up and leave, and then when they look back at each other for that final moment, and he just holds it there, and that
they smile at each other,
and his nod and smile, and it's like, It's like,
they get
no,
that closure.
I'm destroyed.
I know.
Yeah.
They get that closure. And I don't know if they've ever had a conversation between the park and now. Probably not. I would assume that was really the last time they talked.
I take it as this is like that they haven't spoken. And yeah.
And the opportunity to get that closure and to kind of look at each other and say and acknowledge we matter to each other in our lives. And he's like, look at what I built. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. I've named it after the thing that you suggested. And then here's our song. And that's the song that I'm playing on the opening night of my club. I mean, I'm so glad, because that is a fantastical element at the end of the movie, that they get that opportunity to have such a beautiful moment of closure after everything they've been through. And it also, I feel like, is closure for us as a viewer, because we can see that everything's okay. I mean, it didn't work out the way that we wanted it to, and it's really sad, but there's resolve there, which I think is
they've come to a good place, and they're at peace with what's happened, and like you said, the impact that they had on each other's lives. Like, it's because of each of them that that they achieved their dreams, basically. And that the experience of having been in each other's lives was rewarding, even if it didn't ultimately work out romantically. And so I just feel there's a great amount of catharsis in that moment that's very rewarding, so
and a powerful lesson, I think.
I will let Laura get her little word in. I'm really sorry, Laura, but we're still friends. It's all right.
Laura, when's the last time you watched it? Don't you feel like a little inspired right now about following your dreams and true love doesn't matter? Like, you don't feel inspired right now?
But yeah, no. And then, like I said before, the way then, she turns around to leave, and then he like does this kind of head nod where it's like 1, 2, 3, and they're going in. But then the screen fades out, the music comes up, and we get that great classic Hollywood, the end, and that's it. Yeah. Oh, and just
it hits me every time.
Just so you know, Padar is our resident troll, so he's saying sounds like a pretty major coyote.
we got it. Someone's got to be the troll, so
yeah,
carry that on.
Exactly. No, Laura, no. Okay. Full disclosure, I actually haven't seen Moonlight.
I haven't either. It's one of that just somehow fell under my radar.
That's why I never talk about how this movie was cheated out of Best Picture,
because I haven't seen.
I don't feel like that's fair. That said, I do always comment on how ridiculous that moment actually was, because it's like, what a train wreck.
I know. Well, so it's like sometimes I feel like they do things like that at award shows to get people tweeting about it. And then sometimes I think it's actually real. And I think in that moment it was actually real, know? But we should watch that.
But yeah, I mean, that said, like, the film still did incredibly well, because I think it won like 6 Oscars, including director and actress for Emma Stone. So even looking past that, I think it did pretty well. And regardless, it's one of my favorite films of the past few years, just because it's pretty much like everything that I sort of love about the movies, the romanticism and the and music, obviously, since I'm all into the film music, and I think I have a hard time deciding on, like, for that year, this movie and Arrival. They're both films that I really love.
But for two completely different reasons.
Arrival, they're so different.
Arrival got me thinking for a while after that too, but for different reasons.
And it's funny because I remember I walked out of Arrival and I was like, that is going to be my favorite film of the year. There's no way anything's going to top that. And then I saw this, and for completely different reasons, I was like, oh my God, I'm in love with this movie. It's so great. So yeah, that's like, and as if anybody cares what my top films of each year were, but like when I want to get nerdy about it, I always say like this is the one year where I can't decide on a winner. It's like tied between those two because they were both so great. But so it's funny because I never do I talked about at the beginning of the stream though, I'd never do like the chronological thing anymore with discussing a movie, but because I think we wanted to put off talking about the sad stuff, that it just sort of lent itself to starting at the beginning and going through the end. But do you have any more comments about the movie before we wind down?
I mean, I don't think so. I got to look through and see if I wrote anything really smart in my notes that I completely didn't look at the single time that we were talking because we were just hanging. But no, I mean, I love this movie. I would put it in my top 5 of all time favorite movies of all time. So of all time, 7 times. So I think it rules, and it continues to excite me on rewatch after rewatch. And so it's fun to break it down and kind of get to the root of why I like it so much, because I haven't had that opportunity. So appreciate that we get to chat about it. I feel like my face hurts because I've been smiling this whole time.
And that's why it's occasionally I get some jokes about how like I'm not really a film reviewer as much as I am like a film propagandist. Because I just love like reveling in the joy of talking about movies that I love. And so, and this is a perfect example of that, where it's just great to just kind of gush about this really great movie. And I'm just glad that we finally got to do it, because I feel like we've been talking about it for a while. And now you just have to let me know like what the next live musical performance film you're gonna see is, so that we can
then I'll be on the show again. You know what I was gonna ask you, John? Do you okay, this is something I'm very passionate about. Do you have any AMC movie theaters by you? Because I recently you should become an AMC A-lister, because you spend, I think it's $24 a month, and you can see 3 movies a week, and you can just live the movie theater experience 3 times a week. You should invest in that, because I think you would love it. So just think about that. Look into it.
I definitely haven't been going to the movies a lot lately, just because of everything. Although I did just go back for my first time. I saw the film The Green Knight, which I don't know.
I need to see that. People have been telling me that that's what I got to see. So
I mean, it's a very unusual film, so don't go in expecting like a run of the mill. Like, it's not an action movie or anything. It's very kind of thought provoking and creepy and and all that. So it was my first movie back to the cinemas after like 2 years. So
it's such a good feeling.
I know a lot of people in my group were like, I am not the biggest MCU fan in our group. I don't dislike them as much as I like Let On, because I think it's funny, but I'm definitely on the lower end as far as fans in our kind of circle. And a lot of people were like, we're going to go see Black Widow. It's going to be our first, movie back to the theater. I'm like, no, it's not going to be a freaking Marvel movie. I am going to wait for something that I've really been looking forward to.
Right. So. That makes, I think mine was In the Heights, which is another musical. So that was worth the return.
Yeah, I didn't get to see it on theater, but I'm really looking forward to, I don't know if is it on video yet, or is it coming?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But I will definitely watch that, because I guess I could have watched it on HBO Max when it was on, but I just didn't get around to it. But but good. I'll definitely check it out. Kate says I do it just to bait her, because she has recently gotten into Marvel movies.
Okay.
and so she's really big into it right now. So
I gotta say that is not my area of expertise, but if it because I'm an AMC A-lister baby, which I'm trying to get you on that train, I'll go see anything because it's like it doesn't matter. So count me in for Black Widow or whatever that is.
yeah, I have a feeling that once things settle down, hopefully, fingers crossed, that's something I'll get into, because I am going to have some lost time to make up for.
Yeah, big time.
Because I think the last movie I went to go see was Little Women, and like very beginning of
movie.
2020. Yeah,
that might have been my last movie too in theaters before everything.
Yeah, and yeah, because I got a chance to talk about that movie on this channel too with my well, currently she's not my co-host, but Amy, she was my co-host, and we were talking about that, and as well as another guest, and it was just the best time, because one of the joys of this channel has been I've gotten to talk about movies that I think stereotypically, there are certain movies that guys aren't supposed to really like, and so one of the joys of this channel has been me getting to sort of wave my flag of the movies that I really love, regardless of what genre they are, or whatever. So yeah, I had a blast talking about that, and
that's a good one. It's a good one.
But anyway, yeah, just thank you once again for coming on, and honestly, I hope you'll come back again soon. We can find something else to talk about. We don't actually have to wait for the next live performance.
Yeah, that might be a while. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, this has been really fun, and I'm glad that you invited me back, because I'm so grateful. So I love hanging out with you, John. I also can't wait till we see each other in person. So hopefully both of those things will happen in the near future. So
yeah, I have just absolutely had it with all these delays and cancellations. It's like I am just so ready to get together with, like, again, I'm hoping that HereBeCon happens in October so I can see a lot of the friends I've made, but like I hope next year the actual conventions really do happen, because I just like, it's so funny, because I spent a couple of years like making baby steps towards being like social with people at these events, and then just when I'm ready to come out of my shell, it's like, nope, we're gonna throw a pandemic your way.
Yeah. But now it makes you realize that like that's the life you want to lead. I hate being social 24/7, but you like had a chance to get a taste of the friendship, and then now you know how much it means to you.
When you and I were talking at GeekyCon, you said, you were talking about how you go to, multiple conventions throughout the year just because you become addicted and you need that, interaction. And at the time I was like, I don't know if I could, like afford to spend the money on that and stuff. But it's funny that once you realize like how really important that becomes to you, of like interacting with the people that you've really come to love as the dearest friends and family, it's like you'll make things work.
You find a way.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's how I'm going to be once the world starts turning again, because I will just want to be going to as many things as I can to
the secret, John, is sign up to talk on a few panels, and they'll usually give you a free ticket, and you've got your show, so you can totally do that. So sit on a few panels, they'll give you a ticket.
Well, it's funny, because like it was 5 minutes after I talked to Steven for the very first time on Twitter that he was saying we should do a panel together. So bless him. So we've actually already been set to do panels at Con of Thrones. It's just Con of Thrones didn't happen. So
yeah. It'll all come back. So you'll have your opportunity. I'll be in the crowd cheering you on. So
So anyway, so just wrapping things up, just tell the folks once more what you guys have coming up and where they can find you on Twitter and everything.
Yeah, you can find Game of Owns on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We say on OnlyFans too. And we haven't announced yet what we're doing after A Feast with Dragons, but that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. So really excited to continue to share the A Song of Ice and Fire journey with you all, and find me at Game of Owns.
I'm looking forward to that next episode because it's truly going to feel like the end of an era.
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, everybody, I don't have the next episode planned yet because some things will be going on for the next couple weeks, next weekend. Although I will mention what I'm doing next weekend just because I'm going to be hopefully getting some stuff to share with you guys. I will be in Atlanta with Aziz and Ashay, and we're actually going to go to an exhibition for the Dark Crystal, The Age of Resistance. So I'm hoping to get some pictures for you guys, maybe some video. I don't know what you're allowed to do inside the the puppetry center there, so we'll have to see, but hopefully I'll have some stuff to show off. Maybe I'll throw it up on my Twitter page, or maybe I'll even make a video out of some of the stuff for here. But yeah, so, and after that, I'm probably due for another episode on The Bad Batch to wrap up the discussion of that show. So all of you need to catch up so you can tune in for that. But yeah, make sure you tune in tomorrow on Here Be Dragons for a discussion on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And then next weekend, make sure to tune in there for their discussion on What If, the Marvel series, which I really enjoyed the first episode. So it's actually a shame I won't be there to talk about it, but I'll survive somehow. But yeah, thank you again, Hannah, and it was great to have you back, and I really look forward to the next thing we get to discuss, whatever that ends up being. And
Me too.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful night, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.